Welcome, friends, to another episode of Critical Analysis. Firstly, I hope you guys enjoyed the new introduction. In addition, I hope you took notice of the new addition to the introduction. I'm happy to announce that my friends and colleagues over at Geekosphere have recently put up their new website. I've been working with them for a little over 4 months, making written reviews on video games. They are the reason this channel was created in the first place, actually, and I will be working with them from here on out. So if you enjoy reading in-depth reviews on video games, TV shows, and movies, as well as comic books and other things, please consider heading over to geekosphere.com, which will be linked in the description below. If you do check it out, thank you. In addition, I now have my Facebook page and my Twitter up and running, so give them a follow for me, eh? Alright, let's begin. Today I will be tackling a game that has held me captive for many years. A game that, without fail, every year or so, pulls me back into its depths. I have had an on and off relationship with this game for over the past 8 years or so, but this time I think it has its claws in me for good, and that game is EVE Online. I would like to preface this dive into the game by saying, like most games, this game is definitely not for everyone, even in the MMO sector. It is a game that completely shifted my thoughts on other MMOs actually, to the point where I've actually started to hate their mediocre designs. And when I play these types of games, I can't help but compare them to this game. EVE Online is a very particular game, designed for minds that are economically focused or politically focused, rather than trying to appease its audience with outlandish classes, abilities, scantily clad outfits, or stories like most other MMOs. No, EVE Online is not about short-term focus on leveling, or a singular person's story that creates ludonarrative dissonance with the actual gameplay itself. It's about far more than that. Far more than the single player. Far more than a group of players. And after playing so many other MMOs, World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, ArcAge, Black Desert Online, even pseudo-MMOs like Destiny, The Division, and Star Citizen, I finally realized what it was that made EVE Online such a beautiful design in the first place. But that answer isn't as clear-cut to explain as one might think it is. So I'm going to dive in as deep as I can into what EVE Online is in this video. And hopefully when I'm done here, I will have those answers for you. Perhaps I won't though, because EVE Online is such an expansive passion project that there's more things than I could even possibly talk about in 15 minutes. But I will try. I will say plain and simply right now that this video will be incredibly biased from an MMO standpoint, as nothing I have played since has felt quite as good as EVE Online. The first thing that comes to people's mind when they hear the term sandbox game is usually something along the lines of Minecraft. A game in which a formulaic world is generated and the player is dropped in the middle. And in response, the player is able to manipulate the world to their desires, either in very minuscule amounts or very drastically depending on the game or the settings. But the first thing that always comes to my mind when hearing this is EVE Online. This is because EVE Online is, at its base, a true sandbox game for its players. Almost everything you do in the game is either a reaction to another player or an action itself that will incite a reaction from another player, with only a few small exceptions like mission running, ratting, and incursions. The entirety of EVE Online is what it is because of player actions. This includes the economy, warfare, sovereign control of systems, faction warfare, and even the history of the game, which is written out as it happens. If you buy something on one of the many system markets, you buy it knowing that one person or multiple people went through the process of collecting the materials from the reaches of space, consolidating them and using them to create said something. The entire game is, at the end of the day, really just a massive study on chaos theory. The butterfly effect, an underlying principle of chaos, describes how a small change in one state of a deterministic, non-linear system can result in large differences in a later state. state. In more simple terms, it means that EVE Online is a universe in which your actions and your reactions echo out to those around you. Even something as simple as a single person's actions can reverberate out and cause massive changes that you could not expect. According to Newton's third law, all actions have an equal and opposite reaction. EVE Online, however, does not always follow this law, simply because the introduction of free will changes the equation significantly. Actions sometimes have no meaningful reaction. Sometimes they have reactions that far outweigh the initial action. It is chaos and order balanced on the edge of the free will of the players with and against each other. I really don't want to get all philosophical about it all, but what I am trying to say is that EVE Online is more than just a game. It's more than just an MMO. It is a living, breathing universe with real, tangible economies, politics, and people held within it. However, because of this nature, the game is non-directed from the very beginning. This is the first roadblock many players have when they first try the game, and widely the reason why most people stop playing it early on. Past the tutorial and the basic missions, EVE Online does not tell you what to do with your existence within it. It sets you free to do what you want, but that also is what makes it so beautiful. Ludonarrative dissonance is a massive problem I find across the MMO sector, specifically in the opening segments of the games. Typically, MMO games will put you in a opening mission that empowers you, having you kill a monster that only you can kill, that you know as a player for a fact everyone playing the game right now has already killed that monster. Or my personal favorite, turning the tides of a war all by yourself at level 1. Seriously, I can't stand the openings to most of these types of games. In some cases, games even start you at a super high level only to strip it all away from you. It's lazy, annoying, pandering bait to try and keep you playing the game for as long as possible. EVE Online is the antithesis of this design. It doesn't hold your hand through a cascade of meaningless, mundane missions in an effort to keep you interested long enough to get you to endgame. In fact, like myself, you can simply ignore the training missions altogether and head straight into nullsec PvP on day 1. And better yet, you can actually be effective at it on day 1. This is simply because EVE Online's design integrates new players directly into the functionality of PvP. But I don't care for PvP, RetroArch, I hear you say. What is there for me in this game? Well, my friend who definitely is not imaginary, I would actually personally consider PvP to be one of the least interesting things in EVE Online. Truly, the individual aspects of EVE Online are, by themselves, honestly fairly boring by a gaming perspective. You aren't swinging swords to cut down enemies in droves, or even manning the cockpit of your fighter for fun and intense dogfights. But like many other deeply designed games these days, EVE Online is a game that doesn't bother trying to keep you entertained with short-term thrills. Instead, the game aims to make each and every individual scenario an experience in and of itself, for better or worse for the player. Typically, all experiences land firmly on one side or the other of a player, benefiting one while the other loses. Sometimes this is just very minutely, or sometimes the loss can be astonishingly massive. And how this loss to gain ratio is calculated is, well, the economy, of course. EVE Online is, in its entirety, a game dictated by monetary value, and the risk associated with gaining that value. The many marketplaces of EVE Online are not supplied by AIs, and everything on the markets are finite. This means that there is a real supply and demand chain. Just about every item on the market was supplied by someone doing something across New Eden. This is truly the heart and soul of the game, really. And honestly, there is something for everyone when it comes to making ISK and EVE. Things that are completely different from one another in design aspects. From mining to exploration to ratting to industry, the world of EVE is littered with things to do. And as you get more and more comfortable with the game, you will find yourself taking bigger and bigger risks to get those things done. How much ISK you lose and how much you gain on a day-to-day basis is directly related to how well you are doing in the game at the current moment. It's a constant balancing act of risk versus reward, and naturally, as the risk gets higher, so does the reward. But this is not because of the game's designs, but rather as a result of other players existing. They are always a threat to you, and as the reward for, say, wormhole exploration gets higher and higher, you are faced with two choices. Do you cash out now with what you have, or do you keep pressing on for more? The sense of tension this creates, especially in wormhole space, is palpable. It is the driving force behind why EVE Online is such an immersive experience to begin with. But I will admit that this fact also makes EVE Online mentally exhausting to play at times. Anything you decide to do in EVE has even deeper applications, such as mining, splitting off into specific designations like gas mining, ice mining, strip mining, and deep core mining. All of these designations have fundamentally different gameplay, all with completely different rewards and risks involved with performing them. Then there are all the industry wings like planetary installment and moon mining, which are completely passive and have no risk involved at all, but require time and ISK investments to get started. Personally, I love PI when I'm taking breaks from the intense madness of wormhole space. It is no one system in this game that makes the game, but the culmination of interesting, intricate systems that populate the world of EVE with rich content. But the heart and soul of EVE Online is by far its community. The game is constantly pushing you towards meeting people, making friends, and joining a corporation. This is because in EVE, you can do very little alone. But in numbers, working as one, your influence on the world around you grows exponentially. But it is different from other MMOs in the fact that these people are not just seen as numbers. They are, in fact, real people. In my time playing MMO games, I have noticed something about most of them. Despite having some of the most massive player bases in gaming, they're more often than not some of the loneliest games in existence. Typically, this is because the designs of said game reward people for staying on their paths instead of attempting to meet people and make friends. EVE Online does not have this issue. In fact, once again, it is the antithesis of this issue. EVE Online almost requires you to interact with people if you want to get anywhere within it. Organized PvP absolutely requires voice communication, connecting the players together on a deeper level than a simple chat box on a screen. And while other games do this for the in-game content, I strongly believe that the best way to play EVE Online is to boot it up for the first time and immediately go to the recruitment channel and chat and reach out to people, because you'll suddenly find yourself invited to a Discord and you will suddenly start meeting people, a lot of people. Many of the important things in EVE Online take long amounts of time and many people to perform. It's a strange thing, actually. EVE Online sometimes transitions into less a game and more a social environment. When attacking a player-operated station, for instance, it can sometimes take up to 6 hours to bring down just the shields on the craft, even with 50 to 100 people all blasting at it. Because of this, there is a constant desire to fill that time by any means necessary. And that sounds boring, but during a 6-hour barrel shoot on a station, I've had some of the best times I've ever had in EVE Online. This reality often results in players talking about deep topics, playing funny games on the side, sharing memories, memes, or stories, telling jokes, and generally just getting to know people on a deeper level than most games offer. I truly have had EVE friendships that were more real than real-life friendships. In fact, in my recent return to the game, I was surprised to find that people from Brave Newbies A corp that I had not flown with for over 3 years still remembered me from so long ago. A fact that surprised me greatly. That has never happened to me in any other MMO, period. EVE Online helps forge friendships that I can only compare to real in-person relationships. Friendships that truly stand the test of time, despite never having even seen the person's face in most cases. They mourn the deaths of friends, something that I have experienced personally, as the company mourns with them for the loss of players. Every so often, you could see massive vigils held for fallen players, in which friends and enemies are invited to fight and even hold arms in remembrance. The final tribute, often associated with permanent loss of an EVE player, often shared in memorial posts on forums, is a poem inspired by the cadence of the traditional naval goodbye, the Watch. It was originally written and shared by the Reddit user Drancella. Forgive me if I messed up that name. Eyes forward, Capsuleer. The Cyno is not yet lit. Consider your modules, your rigs, and ammo before you undock, for the Cyno is not yet lit. Break free of the station and witness the universe before you, for the Cyno is not yet lit. Set your ships to fly through the vastness while you wait, for the Cyno is not yet lit. Pay attention, Capsuleer, for those who have gone before you call for you to join them. The Cyno is now lit. For a video game to hold so much of reality within it is just about unheard of. It's truly awe-inspiring, heartbreaking, emotionally charged, that I almost can't handle it at times. EVE Online is just about the only game that can really make my battle-hardened emotions break down. No other game even comes close to this. Not an MMO in existence. Not even an emotionally charged single-player game like The Last of Us can scratch the surface of my emotional mask. But I have cried for EVE Online on multiple occasions. I cried in the final siege on the Allies in the Fountain Wars. I cried for the death of Bellicose, someone who I didn't even know. I cried tears of pride seeing my username etched in the stone of the statue and time capsule dedicated to the community of EVE Online. And when I'm there, touching the stone, seeing the statue, I know I'll cry again. Because EVE Online is more than just a game. It's a way of life. And there is a pride that comes with being a part of a world like this. A world that is as much a part of you as you are of it. And even if it is just a small part. Because EVE Online cannot exist without the players. Because EVE Online is the players. The pirates, the industrials, the miners, the wormholers, high-sec players, low-sec players, null-sec players. They are all working with and against each other to create the game for each other. There are people that I will never meet, never talk to, never attack or blow up across New Eden that I love, respect, and hate all at the same time for the actions that they may or may not perform in the future. Because they are all part of the game. They are each important in their own way, and the game could not even be played in the first place without them. I hope that, if even for a moment, I could make you understand how I feel about this game. How this game has affected me. And if not, I'm sorry that I failed you. But I have done the best I can in really explaining the designs, concepts, and most importantly, the deep emotional attachment this game has in me. If EVE Online ever gets taken down in my lifetime, even if life gets in the way down the road and I'm unable to play it any longer, I would still feel as if a piece of me had died. And I doubt that wound would ever really heal fully. Hopefully I don't have to endure this, as I would rather die knowing that EVE Online continued on without me than to ever see it all come to an end. Thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, help. How did you make it this far? I'm sorry. This was supposed to be a much shorter video than it ended up being, but there was just no way I was explaining all this under 15 minutes. I'll try to keep my next video short and to the point for you. Thanks, guys. Peace!